Hey, cheers, my mates. Before we start, I would just like to quickly apologize to all of you. This content should have been out quite some time ago, and especially to Johnny Walker Dread. I'm sorry, mate. I can't feel it on. I dropped the ball, even though, as you can see on what you're seeing now, right now, is my home region got hit by a catastrophe, a freaking tornado. A tornado in Czech Republic, yeah, that's not something you hear every day. In any case, well, I decided to go extra into work and stuff like that, and like to get harder jobs and stuff like that, less free time in order so I can donate more to help the people because I have a quite high income job. And well, by the way, nobody from my family or friends got fortunately, thank God, hit, but still, those are my countrymen. I need to help them. And well, that would be one thing, but then this happened. Yeah, the basically the region where I work, I work in petrochemical industry, and we have headquarters. Well, I work for a Luxembourgish division, but we have our overall headquarters of the company in Cologne, Germany. Well, both of those got flooded. We even lost some colleagues, unfortunately. I even knew one of them, so it's fun. That's fun. Fuck me. And yeah, so at work it was crazy, and even though I had 3 weekends, I think 1, 2, maybe even 3 weekends, like now I was so burned out, I couldn't do anything, and yeah. But hey, I'm back, baby. So yeah, let's kick some ass, shall we?
Okay, we are on the air. I'm John Walker Dread. I have a YouTube channel where I have posted a ton of videos, most of it related to the Kyle Rittenhouse saga, but including Chrystul Kizer, Jacob Blake, and Dominic Black. And I'm joined by...
Hey, cheers, my name is Paul. I have a logical checkmate YouTube channel where I also have stuff on Kyle Rittenhouse, but trying to basically go also a bit out of it. But there's so much still to cover, basically to put forth. Yeah, so I think that will be for quite some time will be keeping me busy on that topic.
Well, I was thinking we could start off with some updates. There have been some things that have been happening here. Chrystul Kizer's lawyer, the judge in the Chrystul Kizer case has gone to appeal the original. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened there, but Chrystul Kizer has pretty much abandoned any kind of attempt at self-defense claim. And she's gone on to the safe harbor deal where she's claiming that her shooting of Randall Volar was due to sex trafficking. And the judge in that case originally said that no, this idea somehow that we can excuse you from certain crimes because you've been sex trafficked doesn't apply to murder. And she appealed that.
Yeah.
And the Wisconsin Court of Appeals came back, surprisingly to me, and said that no, this safe harbor exception to murder can be extended to murder. And so this is a big victory for her in a way. It allows her to present evidence that she was sex trafficked and that this sex trafficking led to her shooting of Randall Volar, in which case she could be exonerated. Yep. Well, the judge has appealed that decision, and now it's going to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which means, and all, by the way, what this really means is her case is not going to be heard for a long time.
Which could be victory in a small, manner, like in itself for her. But
for Kyle. And the reason is because if she had come to trial and had been exonerated, I'm sorry, let me try that again. If she had come to trial and been convicted, the mobs outside the Kyle Rittenhouse trial would have been uncontrollable. It would have been insane. It's going to be kind of hard anyway.
Yeah,
you're going to see a lot of pressure.
Definitely. But I would like to basically address just what it tells about society and us, because I'll be honest here, first, if we recap it and just strip it bare bones, what her defense team is basically arguing is, yeah, okay, she shot him, she killed him with the intention to kill him, but it doesn't matter because she was, sexually trafficked. And obviously, objectively speaking, or something like that, we could say, hey, she should have, for example, go to the police, etc., blah, 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 Doesn't really matter, but let's be honest. At least I am, kind of okay with that if we are not setting precedents, and what also big part of the society will be completely A-okay with her on purpose shooting and killing him. Not to mention, setting fire to the house, etc., like stealing the car. And this is basically a legal loophole. And we are kind of okay with that because, let's be honest, Mr. Waller was, a piece of work, to say the least. And yeah, well, what it says about us, but what is rather more important is that there will be like a lot of double standard when it comes to, for example, someone else, where we talk a lot about Kyle Rittenhouse. So yeah, there he literally ran away. He shot in immediate, threat, in immediate self-defense, etc., etc., etc. Yet the people that will be okay with Chrystul Kizer shooting on purpose and killing on purpose, that like Mr. Waller, and not only that, but also going to his place of residence, maybe even with the intention of killing him, they won't mind. And that's dangerous.
The hypocrisy is really intense here, because as soon as you bring up the victim's past in the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting, what's their reaction is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of person the victim is.
Yeah.
They have just as much a right to life and liberty as anybody else, which is true, right? No, there is no, you can't excuse what Kyle did based on just, the people he shot in their backgrounds.
Yeah.
And a lot of right-wingers have. A lot of right-wingers have said, hey, man, he killed a former rapist. It's good. Well, no, it doesn't work like that.
We kind of get to that because, but basically, the hypocrisy also extends to the part, because you cannot bring the past wrongdoing of the deceased in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, which, in my opinion, is it's a fair point. Those are not relevant in that immediate, basically for Kyle from his perspective in that moment, but yet they are very quick to point out alleged, basically the past misconduct of Kyle, which was punching the girl, which was, like literally kitty tapping, on the back of the neck. And I mean, guys, if you dismiss one past wrongdoing, you must dismiss the other one too. Because if we would be applying them to somehow determine who's guilty or who's at fault, etc., Kyle still, comes up on top if we compare the past, past wrongdoings.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, a lot of people will say, well, he also got a speeding ticket. But so what we see on social media, and I've seen a ton of it on Twitter and Facebook, is Randall Volar was a sex trafficking pig, and her shooting of him was getting rid of a terrible element of society. Good for her. Kyle Rittenhouse, the background of Joseph Rosenbaum shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter that he raped a bunch of boys. I mean, come on. That's his background. It doesn't matter. How in the hell do you coalesce those views? Well, when it comes to politics, people have no trouble with having extreme contrarian, or I should say inconsistent viewpoints.
Yeah, definitely. And I must say, this, as you said, exactly extends to even, let's say, pro-Kyle guys. and I must say I'm having like a lot of problems talking with basically Americans when there's a cultural difference on how we basically communicate, because like they literally, I just got comment on my latest video where a person was claiming that Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero, and I was like, yeah, well, in my opinion, hero is basically a person who risks his life for others. And well, if Kyle is a hero, that we was there in the first place, defending the property, etc., etc., you need to apply it to everyone else. And when I'll actually put check, like what was he saying precisely? And he told me that he could have panic and sprayed 50 felons, blah blah blah. Just the flawless gun control makes him a hero. Watch the video, etc. Yeah, and he was like, basically, before you comment something stupid or something like that. And I didn't respond because I wanted to basically make a video on that. Like, dude, did you just tell me to watch those videos? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I literally, I went in painstating detail over like details, over who was carrying what, etc. Maybe I was the first to identify Mr. Zeminski as the first shooter. Like, did you just tell me that? That's A. But B, I clearly, I just said, in my opinion, what defines a hero? What is a hero? Right? I put forth my opinion, yet he changed it to basically stating as a fact. No. Yeah. And that's literally like, you are imposing your views upon me, and not only that, you see yourself as righteous, because that's just how it is. It's not a matter of interpretation. And I'm encountering this a lot when talking with Americans, and I'm sorry that I'm kind of like going in this with you, but I would like to, because I'm now working on a video of basically Czech George Floyd situation, and there was an interview between a police officer and like absolute legend of a police officer who happens to be Roma, and a Roma journalist. And they basically talk, and I noticed we talk completely differently to you, because here and there I interrupt you and stuff like that. It's because we in the Czech Republic, we talk, it's kind of like a dance where we're trying to figure out what the other one is saying. And he was like, literally, the police officer was describing something, and then the interviewer like kind of interrupted him. But like, if you take this, oh, it's like that, and they were trying, honest to God, understand each other. And like, what I a lot of times encounter is, I want to win. I don't care about understanding. I don't care there's possibility something else. I want to win. And I'm honestly struggling a bit when it comes to in discussing with Americans a bit.
Right. Oh well, yeah. I mean, the divide is real here, and this is, if you look at the way that people talk about each other, this is kind of a precursor to a civil war. What I mean by that is that the environment is very similar. 100%. And it happened in Spanish Civil War, where the divide, people really looked upon those that had slightly different views and stuff as real betrayers. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it's going on here. Now, I don't think a civil war is coming. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying is that it has that same kind of atmosphere where it's us versus them. And let's do a little litmus test to find out which side you're on. And by the way, I will say that the Trumpers are really bad for this. And that is, you're a rhino, we call them here in the United States, Republican in name only, which is worse than a Democrat. That's worse than Antifa in their mind. And the way you get labeled a rhino is if you say no to any one of a whole long list of questions, like, are you in, do you think that Ashley Babbitt was shot justifiably? There's a right and wrong answer. And if you answer the wrong one, oh, well, you're one of them. Mm. And it's just, I really have real problems with that. In my opinion, anybody who goes lockstep like that when it comes to answering these questions is not someone I would trust.
Yeah. And the problem is that they have like double standards, honestly, to situations where they have certain principles, but if you apply them to other situations, that's different. That doesn't, it's not like that, and it's both, I must say, again, from be it, like pro-Kyle, against Kyle, anti-Kyles, or I guessing, like Republicans and Democrats, and it is really scary.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to read the New Yorker article?
Not full. I was getting like just in.
Boy, I tell you what, has the right, or I should say, pro-Kyle side been hoodwinked? Oh my gosh! I'm actually creating a series of videos where I'm going to show pro-Kyle people how to start reading articles and catching these little tricks that these leftist writers are pulling. She is pulling out every stop. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's a propaganda artist.
Yeah.
And she's terrible investigative journalist. I'm sorry, terrible investigative journalist, but a great propaganda artist. And she's doing all the tricks. And so I'm going to be one video after another. I'm going to show how to read these articles and see what they're doing. I just could not believe it that they fell for this. I mean, the title of the article is Kyle Rittenhouse, American Vigilante. Oh, yeah, right. This is going to be very pro-Kyle, really.
Yeah. And you're right. And what basically gives them this, let's say, power, or I don't know how to say that, but they don't really outright lie. They just say it, what I mean, like in such a way where you basically cannot accuse them of a lie. That's, for example, with the when it comes to the statistic around BLM protests, that only 7% of them is violent. But if you do the math, it was like 7,700 protests or something like that, in 2020. And only 7%. That's over 550 violent protests. That's more than one a day. I mean,
yeah. Well,
not a good statistic in my opinion.
And how do you define a protest? If you have in a city, you might have 4 or 5 of these things going off at the same time, but do you count them as single one or individual? Well, guess what? Depends on if they're peaceful. If they're largely peaceful, there are 5 of them.
Yeah.
If it was violent, there was only 1. And of course, also, how do you define violent? I mean, is it you have to have arrests made of people for assault? Well, if that's the case, they're all peaceful because the police aren't arresting anybody,
Yeah.
So you can manipulate this stuff all day till the cows come home. It's trivial. And one of the things is in my background, I know how to use statistics to bullshit, really. And it's but some of the tricks, and I'd like to go ahead and spend a little time here now talking about some of the things she's doing in this article. And because there are going to be people listening to this are going to be wondering, like, well, like what? Okay. The title itself, American Vigilante, everybody knows that the vigilante has a negative connotation to it.
100%.
First of all, I said it's dumb to call him a vigilante in the first place. But okay, even if you think he's a vigilante, this is setting the stage for a very negative article. But you'll notice something. She doesn't mention Blake having the knife until much later. And so Blake is painted in a sort of almost neutral, somewhat negative light initially because she's going to lead into the protests. And she doesn't want to start talking about the protests after she has said that, well, he did have a knife, because then it would make the protests look like they're completely unjustified. And so she doesn't mention anything real negative about Blake until after she discusses the protests.
100%.
Hey, this is anybody out there who read that article kind of wonder, gee, why in the hell is it that she talked about Jacob Blake, stopped, and then talked about him again? Well, there's the reason. She doesn't want to, she can't really present the Jacob Blake deal without mentioning the knife. That's irresponsible journalism, although I think she's not above that. But I think that she kind of feels like, I do have to mention the fact that he did have a knife and it was more than a scuffle, right? And she has to mention Jacob Blake early on because this was the precursor to all of the riots and the shootings. But how do I handle this? Well, split it in two. Mention the kind of the neutral stuff initially, then you can talk about all the writing and stuff like that. The knife and stuff, we'll bury it towards the bottom, where a lot of people have probably quit reading.
No,
That's how
it's
it works.
literally like fine print on a contract hidden, you know, like somewhere down below. So they're technically legal, but scummy nonetheless.
It's scummy and it's intentional. I implore people, don't think that this was some accidental deal. This is planned. It's by design. Keep in mind, I'm a technical writer. And one of the things that I always look at is structure. And so I use these graphic organizers and I lay out the structure of my writing. If I'm writing any large piece, and that's a large piece. Yeah. And where I'm going to place stuff is laid out early on. She mentioned the things about the knife and all this stuff at the bottom for a reason. It's not by accident. 100%. There's go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's, I don't know. Sorry. And also there's another thing they in the news, what they do nowadays a lot is that they cite a person they either know is lying or telling a mistruth, and they say, oh, this person said it.
Yeah,
100%. Technically speaking, you are not lying. Yeah, but when you are not verifying his statement, you are lying by omission, basically, or something. I don't know. Who cares? But yeah, it's still deceitful.
Yeah, you can always come back and say, well, I was just quoting such and such, right? Yeah. My view of it is, it was in your article, unless you're willing to come forward and say there's some disagreement about the reality of what this person is saying, you don't put it in. If you insert it, it's on you. But journalists don't feel that way. And so, yeah, that's a very common tactic as well. And the choice, and this is what I'm working on now, the next video I'm doing is the choice of the people that you use for your articles tells everything. Because if you'll notice, she has lined up probably a good maybe 10 experts on that she's going to quote. Look at their backgrounds. People don't do that. People won't look at their backgrounds, and they'll say, oh, Harvard professor, and one of them is Noah Feldman, Harvard professor Noah Feldman, and he goes off talking about self-defense and how it doesn't necessarily align to common sense, which we know what that means. It doesn't agree with his views. And people will look at that and say, Noah Feldman, they click on the Wikipedia. He's a very smart man, okay? And he has a very big reputation in legal circles. He's no lightweight. He's an expert. He's an expert in Islamic religious freedom. He has no background in self-defense at all. In fact, he has no background in defending anybody. He's not a trial lawyer. And so he's from Massachusetts and Connecticut. And I know you're not necessarily all that familiar with the United States, but those are just about the most urban anti-gun places you can find in the United States. I doubt that he's ever held a gun. And so he's writing on what is common sense about the self-defense deal, but he's writing it from the background of a person who is probably hoplophobic. I mean, he probably is scared to death of guns. And so, and he has no understanding of Wisconsin self-defense laws at all. He makes all kinds of mistakes. And so, and there's a number of others. She quotes a guy from the FBI, former FBI special agent. And you think, wow, that's pretty even-handed. He's also a former counselor for the ACLU. She doesn't mention that part. And so when you look at the backgrounds of these people, the ones that she actually names and quotes are all heavy leftists. When it comes to his handling of the firearm, she quotes, instead of real people, one survivalist says, one gun user says, doesn't quote anybody.
Seriously?
Yeah. So she denigrates, so she's I think it was one gun user said, said in a worshipful manner of some sort that his trigger discipline was, really good or solid or something like that. So don't name anybody and denigrate with them by calling them worshipers, fans, admirers.
Yeah.
And the pro-Kyle people fell for it.
Yeah.
And, but here's the interesting thing. And here's what I'm going to be making a point in my video. And that is, there are plenty of people that she could have contacted. Assad Mayoub, he's available. He's probably the preeminent Assad Mayoub. He's probably the most preeminent self-defense dude out there when it comes to firearms. And he's talked about Kyle Rittenhouse. He would have gladly contributed to this article if she had called him.
Not to mention that she could honestly, if she would be worried about, let's say, some political tainting, she could go even abroad to, for example, some self-defense instructors or something like that, like experts on the matter, basically. Oh yeah, hey, tell me just no laws or anything to basically analyze it for me.
Yeah, basically it comes down to if there are any positive characteristics, don't bring in any experts to talk about it. Instead go online. And this is her research when it came to this was going online on Twitter and finding people. And you're going to find every nut on the planet. And so you quote somebody, he had a really great trigger discipline, according to some nut I found on the internet. That's what it should say. Mm-hmm. But that's how it's done. And by the way, throughout the entire article, the only people that are actually discussing the whole issue of the legalities of self-defense are Noah Feldman, who I just mentioned to you, has no expertise in this matter at all, and I forget, Robin Thomas, who is an activist, gun control activist, who also has no legal expertise in self-defense. Her law background is in civil. Mm-hmm. So they're like big names, but there are a ton of people that she could have contacted. She could have contacted any lawyer, self-defense lawyer from Wisconsin, and would have had a really good discussion about what's the law in this Wisconsin. Do you think he can get away with this? What are the issues here? What works in his favor? What works against him? Yes. Assad Mayoub went on YouTube and said exactly those things. He broke it down. Here are some of the things he did right. Here are some of the things he did wrong. He would have been a great addition. But unfortunately, that for her, that would have been a killer for this article, for her viewers. Because I'll tell you right now, this kid's getting off. He's being exonerated. And, and I know that you're probably not as confident as I am, but she is still trying to keep this thing out there that he's really kind of guilty. And if he's going to get off, it's going to be on a technicality. No, he's not getting off on a technicality. He's getting off because the law says he can do what he did, period. I shouldn't do that. That's bad.
I agree with you basically with this, but I'm worried about pardon my French, the shitstorm it will kick out, because most people will simply not bother. Like they to this day believe he is like a mass shooter, etc. Yet, guys, if he's a mass shooter, there were masses of people all around him. He didn't shoot upon them. He shot just the guys that were attacking him. Not a mass shooter in my book, just saying. But I would just like to conclude that what basically is really bad when it comes to this journalism, they require trust, and what I mean, from the viewers or readers, and A, they betray this trust, but B, what it tells about our society is that, well, big part of it are just sheep. They want to be led, literally, and there will be now our haters. For example, I don't know what was his original name, but he has like 10 accounts or something like that already. And what's the difference between you and them? Well, the difference between the two of us and them is that we make videos, we make claim, for example, and we show it. We literally prove it right then and there. You don't have to trust us. Or what in plenty of cases is we just show you something and let you decide, come to your own conclusions. What these newspapers and channel, the lawyer channel and stuff like that are doing is they make these conclusions, etc. for you. They are pushing their opinions, their views upon you. And for example, like in the video where there was the lady lawyer, and she said, "Oh, unfortunately, it looks like it is self-defense." And I'm like,
Yeah.
like, did you just say that? Unfortunately, no. You should be like, yeah, it is legal self-defense. He was defending his life. I'm glad he did that, and the law will stand behind him. You know what I mean? He was attacked. He was victim of a crime. You should be glad he was like he could defend himself. Because here's the news flash. Yeah, it then applies to you too. You can also defend your life when you are attacked. Just saying.
Well, let me ask you a question. Remember, I've always said that there is a certain class of people out there that if they had the truth in a box, and that truth would exonerate Kyle, that they would bury the box. What do you think that lawyer would do?
Yeah, there you go.
You're right. She's saying, unfortunately, he might get off on this technicality of self-defense. So in other words, it might be that he really did defend himself legitimately, and he was under attack, and he did the right thing but we still want him convicted.
Yeah, and basically also some of the haters and stuff like that are saying, or anti-cows are saying, oh yeah, like this video footage, that we, for example, use and stuff like that. Yeah, it really exonerates him, but it will not be admitted in a trial. And I'm like, what? Okay, so you are saying he is objectively speaking innocent, yet you want him in prison to win some form of a contest, political, whatever. You are okay, letting young man to spend the rest of his life in prison, even though he is innocent. I mean, on like technicality or something. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, I was right, and I get a lot of this, and that is kind of an acknowledgement that he would normally get away with it. However, we've got him now on this other technicality. Like, look, if he's really innocent, why do you want him in prison?
Yeah.
And the reason is very simple: politics.
100%.
Another one I'm coming up with here, probably going to be taping tomorrow, is a take by another lawyer that may be the worst I've ever heard. And his take is that the defense wants to bring up the past of Joseph Rosenbaum. Well, that's not going to fly. The backgrounds of people should not matter. And then the very next minute, boy, it's going to be great when the jury gets to hear about that fight that Kyle got into.
100%.
Yeah, like, wait a minute here. The fight, the schoolyard fight, is probably the least relevant of anything, right? Yeah. And I would be really surprised if Judge Schroeder said, allows that.
100%.
And yet the, of Joseph Rosenbaum, by the way, which I also think is really not relevant here, is, going to, that's going to be a little bit more of a touch and go on it. I don't think that Schroeder was going to go for it, but he might. But I really doubt that he's going to go along with that schoolyard fight that Kyle got into. It's a fight.
Yeah.
Who hasn't gotten into one?
Kids
amongst
fight.
A bunch of kids, completely unrelated.
Absolutely.
And I will say this, nothing about the fight has been adjudicated. Nobody has been made to be at fault. So what are you going to conclude from it?
Yeah. That's one. And I just want to ask you, I'm judging just from the timing that basically where the Kyle's defense team wanted the Rosenbaum's past, history be included just as a reaction to basically Mr. Schroeder wanting to have the fight admitted as evidence, or am I incorrect?
So you're saying that because Binger wants...
Oh, Binger, sorry.
Yeah, because Binger wants the fight. We want...
Yeah, I'm judging just from timing, because I read first that Mr. Binger wants the fight, as evidence, and then I read, I think, a day or two later that the Kyle's defense team wants the...
I don't know how this is working because discovery hasn't occurred yet.
Okay.
So maybe they're in the initial deliberations of the discovery and they have come to disagreements on these things.
Mhm.
And so the lawyers are now turning to the judge and saying, we want to include these items here. We need a ruling from you, though.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not that familiar with courtroom procedure, so I couldn't tell you. I don't think it would be much of a retaliation thing. I would think that Richards is going to want that included, even if it gets turned down. At least it gets Joseph Rosenbaum's past in the newspapers at least one more time,
Yeah.
and nobody can complain about that because Binger is the champion of this. And
Mhm.
oh, by the way, the same lawyer was criticizing Richards for his attempt to politicize the trial. Yeah.
I think we just made a wee bit of a mistake when we said that Mr. Rosenbaum's past doesn't matter because, like what now when I had it basically milling in my head. We both have the basically bias on this, that we think that Kyle is innocent. Therefore, like why would it matter because he ran away, etc. It's clear case of self-defense. But it could really matter to an undecided person who basically is trying to figure out. Well, yeah, trying to figure it out. Yeah. So that it
Right.
would matter.
So what will be included? If I had to guess, his past raping of little boys won't. I don't
Mhm.
see any connection between that and what happened in Kenosha. I think his domestic violence arrest is going to be included. And I think that the fact that he was at a psychiatric hospital is also going to be included.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the reason why. And I know that there's some people out there will say, well, that's unrelated. However, you do have to paint the picture of what Kyle faced. And that is going to be, I think, considered as part of the wider question
Right.
about the environment. What do they call that in police force? It's kind of left me here, but it's part of the context
Right.
of the fear that he faced.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is what fear did he face? Well, if the man who's attacking him is a deranged lunatic, I think that the jury should be allowed to say there's a very good chance that when he turned around, he looked at Joseph Rosenbaum, he thought, oh my God, this guy is out to kill me. I think that is relevant.
Yeah.
I don't think that, and I don't think that his behavior in the prison is going to be relevant because he got into a lot of fights and a lot of trouble. But I think the domestic violence paints a picture that this man is an angry son of a bitch. He's got real problems, and that likely played a role in how Kyle perceived the danger that he was under when he turned around.
Right.
Okay.
And I would like to add to that basically two things. I think that there will be included that he was a serious felon. The details are kind of irrelevant there, but he was a felon, And two, he was. We could make an argument that he was suicidal because he OD'd twice in, was it 2 months or 2 weeks?
Right. The fact that he was a felon is probably not relevant.
No,
the fact
I will get to that. I will get to that because
sorry.
He was, but he overdosed in two times in 2 weeks or 2 months. I forgot honestly.
Oh, I thought he overdosed like really, really close to the
back to back. Yeah. Okay. So that is my argument. Basically, the guy was suicidal, or to a degree, he didn't care about his life. And now, why he didn't care about his life? Because he was already a convicted felon, and he had another charges pending against him. And you could, for example, go into, it's not really his fault, society and stuff like that. And I must say, we could have a long debate on basically U.S. justice system, and I think it's a bit too harsh, to ex-felons on certain points. That is absolutely true. It could turn, basically, Mr. Rosenbaum's story into a tragedy. Yet it clearly shows, at least in my mind, that he simply perceived his life as done. He's a felon with charges against him. He tried to overdose twice. I honestly think he was either immensely reckless because, well, yeah, he's chasing a guy with AR-15, just saying. And I would go also as far as to say that it is plausible that Mr. Rosenbaum was trying to commit suicide by cop-ish.
Or I would go a little bit differently. I would suggest I don't think he was trying to commit suicide, but I don't think he cared whether Kyle shot him.
Yeah, he was beyond reckless. That's
yeah.
Undeniable.
And okay, so the felony will probably not be included. The suicide attempt probably will. I think that omitting that from the trial would create an appeals issue for Richards, and I don't think that Schroeder wants that. Yeah. Keep in mind that Schroeder is going to be a little more lenient towards the wishes of the defense than the prosecution, and it has nothing to do with bias. That's the way the court system is supposed to function. The defense is going to be given a little more leeway because we've always had this ideal that it's better to not convict guilty people than convict innocent people. And so, we've always sort of played this to where, the rights of the accused outweigh those of other people's rights. It doesn't always work out that way because money comes into play. And what destroys it is when, you might have more rights as the accused, but if you don't have any money to have a good lawyer fight for those rights, what good does it do you?
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And here, if I may, just a distinction between our two countries is that, as far as I know, and this is just basically judging from OJ trial and some quick research, etc. If a defendant in a criminal case wins, he basically has the charges dropped, or he wins in the trial. He doesn't get reimbursed for the lawyers, right? No. Yeah.
No. Well, that could vary from state to state, but I don't know of any state that does that.
Okay,
I think that would bankrupt almost any state.
Yeah. Well, in the Czech Republic, we have that and it forces two things. First, the prosecutors to actually come with cases, to prosecute cases they can win.
Right.
And B, even poor people will get really good lawyers if there's a lot of evidence of their innocence, because the good lawyers will literally flock. To them, it's time to get paid, by the state, what I mean? And obviously, the rich people will have it, still better, because even if they are kind of guilty, they can afford those lawyers. But in my opinion, this is at least as good as you will get, basically, with justice if you need to pay lawyers, etc., unless you live in a communist country or something like that.
I'm a little concerned that your impression of our court system is based on the OJ trial. Oh no, well, it's not like that. It's not like that.
No, not obviously everything. No, I was judging because what I said judging was that, and I read or heard that OJ was basically bankrupted, even though he was found innocent by those, that he was paying for the defense so much. So
it's a real problem with the American system, and that is the poor. And this is what kind of drives me crazy, is that everybody talks about it as a racial thing.
I wanted to transition to that. Yeah.
Right, because it's like, well, the American justice system treats peoples of color poorly. It treats the poor poorly.
Yeah,
and it's true that the poor is comprised more of these minority groups.
100%.
And look, I'm not saying that there wasn't a time when the American justice system didn't treat certain racial groups really badly. In fact, Louisiana, they just, like it was like a year ago, Louisiana was told by the U.S. Supreme Court that, when it comes to trying people for crimes, you have to have a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
Louisiana didn't want unanimous, because they were afraid that there might be one or two black people in a jury pool that would not convict a black person. And so they always wanted it like what they call a supermajority. So those are racist, things. And the American justice system has had that. But for the most part, the real problem with the American justice system is just simply that it takes a lot of money to defend yourself, and it's not the way it should be.
Yeah,
you know, we do provide public defenders, and the trouble is that one they're government workers. You know, so it's like, you know, it's 4 o'clock. I think I'm going to go ahead and kick off now. Going home. You know, it's like, wait, you're supposed to be here till 5. Yeah, but you know, I always leave at 4 o'clock. You get a lot of that. And the other one is that it costs a lot of money to bring in experts to, you know, to testify. They won't pay it, and so the prosecution has a huge advantage in this. As an example of an expert witness, I was just reading, this is going on my next video, one of my next videos, in the extradition hearing for Kyle Rittenhouse, the defense brought in Andrew Branca as a expert witness for them. He is the preeminent self-defense lawyer in the United States. He wrote the Bible on self-defense, and he's also done some videos on the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. He's solid pro Kyle. And so if the defense brings him in on this trial, the prosecution has a huge problem. But anyway, that's an aside, I guess.
Yeah, good to hear, definitely.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, well, that's okay. No, the last time you talked, you made me forget what I was going to say, so we're even.
Yeah, something like that. I'm still getting used to this basically concept and all, like with audience and stuff like that. Talk about it, yeah.
Well, and you know, you probably have a better understanding of our legal system than most Americans, and I'm not kidding. I have no understanding. I have no understanding of the Czech Republic's legal system at all.
Sure.
But you have, I'm sure, a better understanding of our legal system than the average American, and I know that because I go on Twitter and I go on YouTube and I watch people try to tell others about the legal system, and they get nothing right. Yeah. They get nothing right. And so, it's been one eye-opening thing for me, was going through this Kyle Rittenhouse deal, was just how ignorant the average American is about how our courts work. And I'm no expert. I'm not a lawyer. But, I mean, I know some things. A lot of people know nothing. It's based on what they heard on TV. They watch these TV shows, and you know where the detective Jimmy's opened the lock at night and creeps into the house and uncovers really good information and takes it back. Like, yeah, dang, none of that evidence is going to be admitted, and you're probably facing some serious consequences for essentially violating somebody's rights. And so they see all this stuff on the TV, the tricks and stuff, and all the lawyers, and they think that they can do that, but it doesn't work that way.
That's one thing, and that would not be that bad, but they then basically not only claim, they believe they know. You know what I mean? And that's then, well, yeah, dangerous, and etc., etc.
I mean, everybody thinks they're a lawyer, and I do that too, but at least I admit when I'm wrong, and I admit when I'm not quite sure.
Sorry.
What was that?
Yeah, I had a morph here, so I was figuring if I can catch it, like, or not. How if somebody would be upset that I killed an like insect or something like that in the audience.
And as an example, if Schroeder comes back and says you can't have the schoolyard fight involved, well, those on the anti-Kyles are going to throw a fit,
100%.
And they're not going to understand why.
100%. Well, there will be even some that will actually understand why, and they won't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, there's always that element too. So yeah, I would really be surprised. Well, we'll put it this way: I think when the events unfold during the trial, I think the anti-Kyles are in for a rude awakening as to how this court system operates. Because they think that Binger is just going to get up there and show the jury all those things that they've been seen passing. You see the puppies. He's trying to taint you. He's trying to make you think that he's a good guy. Judge ain't going to allow that. The judge is not going to allow a lot of stuff that the anti-Kyles think should be fair game for a criminal proceeding, but it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and just when we were talking about the ignorance, basically, if you remember when there was the the bail hearing for the increase, and basically Judge Schroeder like throw it like out of the window. The protest that was happening, that the Kenosha Guard, or no, not Kenosha Guard, goddamn it, like something I honestly forgot how they're called. I actually googled them and stuff, but the young miss was saying, "Oh yeah, the judge, like did not do this and blah blah blah, and it's unprecedented." And he literally cited those precedents there, but you didn't see that in that 30-second excerpt in the news.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It was in that what is 40 minutes or 1 hour or something like that. The whole proceeding, he specifically said it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, like basically, how to say that? There's like a big difference between, let's say, well, me and I would say a lot of my countrymen who at least have high school, like and higher, basically. And we are very careful what we say. You know what I mean? We need to be at least certain degree of certainty. I don't know if that works in English, huh? And to basically be sure that what we are saying is factually true. You know what I mean? So we don't open our mouth unless we actually know something about it. And I'm telling you, if there would be a protest, something like that happening, the person would be watching the whole proceeding and then going from that, not from news, like from 30-second clip. You know what I mean? So yeah.
I'm trying to get my head wrapped around this idea of, wait, a population that doesn't open its mouth unless it has some certainty of what it's saying is true. I'm trying to think, wait, I'm trying to envision what that would look like, because it's not here. It's not here. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We live in the age of propaganda, and it drives everything in this country.
I think that's because that's the difference, We lived under Austrian-Hungary, like in the age of propaganda. We lived under the, like Nazi Germany occupation in the age of propaganda, and we lived during the communism age, like under the, like during the age of propaganda. We kind of had experience with that.
Oh yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah, it's going back to that New Yorker article. You ought to read how it treats the concept of extremism, because, and I counted it, and this is a well-known study, but I actually confirmed it for this New Yorker article. The word right is used in a negative sense 8 times in the New Yorker article. Not once is the use of the word left in a negative connotation. Extremism, the term extremism, is always attached to right wing.
Yeah.
Not once is the word extremism mentioned along with like Antifa or BLM. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And you can count it. This is numerically verified. You can go through that article and you can count the instances. There's no doubt about it. This is a biased article.
Awesome. And by the way, if someone will be now freaking out that we are talking Kano about politics, well, we are not, at least me as a European, as an outsider, we're talking about US politics. No, we are not talking about politics. We're talking about journalism and basically the dangers of it. And well, dangers of propaganda, of manipulating the populace, etc. Because, and when it comes to me and American politics, I honestly don't care. Really, like right, left, I don't care. You do you, as long as you do it based on truth, not based on lies and manipulations, double standards, etc. Because, well, yeah, it leads to bad, results usually.
And I also want to be clear on something. This whole thing about propaganda is manipulated by both sides of the political spectrum.
100%.
The difference is that the left side of the political spectrum has a real lockhold on media. And so they get the opportunity to sort of expose their propaganda on a much wider audience.
Yes.
The right wing is really relegated to like a couple of minor news channels and some social media. But they might have like a couple of newspapers here and there. But for the most part, the left has a real stranglehold on the message. And so the propaganda techniques that they employ have a much wider impact. And the New Yorker article is a perfect example of that. How is it that Paige Williams of the New Yorker got an interview with the Rittenhouses? Well, they have the huge audience. And there is little doubt that one of the reasons why the Rittenhouses agreed to this was because they thought, oh, the New Yorker, well, shoot, everybody's going to read this. This will give us our opportunity to say our side of the story. Well, guess what? And I'll mention another thing about that New Yorker article, but Paige Williams met with Kyle Rittenhouse, talked to him, asked him questions. Not a single moment does she talk about his demeanor. That would be what I would be focusing on. What kind of person is he? What was his demeanor? I mean, does he come off as pleasant? Well, the answer is yes, and that's why she didn't mention it.
Right.
And so she sets up this interview. This is the golden chance to really get to know what these people are kind of like. And she basically paints, discusses what were the questions and their answers, and then blows out of town, doesn't even address what kind of people what are these people like. Amazing that she completely blew her journalistic chance here, but I know why. I think that Wendy and her daughters and Kyle probably came off as pretty nice. And everybody that's talked about Kyle mentions that he seems like a good guy. Mm-hmm. And she can't write that. Her audience would have castigated her. I can't believe that you're defending a murderer. You know that would have been everywhere.
Right.
And so she's not going to mention it.
And you are precise. It is this, like on a microcosm now, it is greatly illustrated. I was in this short Twitter exchange, and there was people basically accusing of Matt Orfelia, I hope I pronounced it correctly, the guy that made basically, in my opinion, the best video summary of the Kyle Rittenhouse incident that's online. It is concise, it is great, best footage, etc. Like, he did a really good job, and he just shows, literally doesn't tell anything of his position, etc. He just shows evidence and lets people to decide. And people are like, "Oh yeah, you're defending Kyle Rittenhouse, the mass murderer," and stuff like that. And I was like, "Wait a second. He's a journalist. He shows evidence and lets you to decide." That's precisely what what journalists are supposed to do. And then a guy, replied with some meme or something like, basically, and he showed screenshots of Mr. Orfela's, tweets. And those were like, "Oh yeah, hey, look, as far as I know, Kyle was running away from a guy that was chasing him," and stuff like that, stating facts that you can see on the video. And plenty of people like this meme reply, and I was like, well, okay, but what I said still applies. He's a journalist, he's stating facts, as you can. And I literally linked in one of my Twitter short videos, where you can see Kyle and Mr. Rosenbaum Mr. Rosenbaum basically saying, or in his group being said, that, hey, let's jump them and take their guns, etc. And then how Kyle is running away, Rosenbaum is chasing him, Mr. Zeminski fires the gun, all of that. Mm-hmm. No answer. And I know there were views. There were plenty of views, and I know it basically, they could not say shit to that. Again, pardon my French, because and they don't, what I mean? And they literally shut their eyes. They say la, not listening. And that's like, it's.
Well, and here's an interesting observation I made. By the way, I think the man you're talking about is Matt Orfelia.
Yeah,
I think the person who put out the video.
Yeah.
I have seen a few people who are vehemently anti-Kyle watch what took place and change their mind. I even did a video on it. And they looked at that and said, okay, it's self-defense. I have never seen the opposite. I have never seen anyone who initially thought that it was self-defense change their mind and say, no, it looks like he's guilty. Not a single time. that presents a problem for the prosecution because they're going to have to change people's minds. You know, you're going to get people in that juror's box. Pretty much all 12 of them have an idea about how they would vote if they hadn't seen any evidence, right? Because if you go to the jury before even the trial and say, what do you think? They would come back with guilty, not guilty.
Yeah.
Because they know enough. So they all are going to have opinions, and the prosecution is the one that has to change the minds. Defense doesn't, you know.
Right.
The only downside of a hung jury is that you have to spend a lot of money to try it again, which usually places the defense at a very huge disadvantage. It won't hear because if it goes through a hung jury and have to do it again, the actual funds will pour in.
Right.
So the prosecution has to get a conviction this time around. And to do that, they got to get 12 people all to say guilty. Good luck. I'm just saying, good luck. But, you know, and will I be nervous about it? Yeah. I mean, there's always the chance that you could, you know, the outcome could be a surprise. So when I said earlier that the kid's getting off, what I mean is I'm almost certain that he's going to be exonerated. Because as you said, you don't know for sure, especially when you bring in the politics on this. I do think that Judge Schroeder is going to be better than the other judges we have seen come down the pike about shutting this thing down. You know, I think he will sequester the jury at some point.
Right.
But yeah,